Live from Bloomberg's world headquarters in New York, I'm Sonali Basak.
And I'm Tim Stenivek. Welcome to Bloomberg Crypto, a look at the people, transactions, and technology shaping the world of decentralized finance.
We are just one day away from the U.S. presidential debate between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. Today, we're going to focus on crypto's increasing role in the presidential race.
And in just a moment, you'll hear from Kraken CEO Dave Ripley. This as the firm reportedly holds IPO ambitions. We'll speak about the U.S. stance on the industry.
And later, the former mayor of Atlanta and current Coinbase Global Advisory Council member Keisha Lance Bottoms joins us to discuss how crypto could potentially help underbanked households.
That's all ahead in the next half hour on Bloomberg Crypto. But first, here's a snapshot of the market, and it hasn't been pretty over the last week. We did see Bitcoin at one point on Monday fall more than 8%. It was the biggest intraday decline since April 13th. And as of last week, we've seen 2 weeks of outflows from Bitcoin ETFs. There are also still concerns about the Fed holding off on rate cuts. We saw a bit of a rebound yesterday when Bitcoin shares rose more than 4%, but still down over the last 7 days by more than 5%. And speaking of Bitcoin being lower, it's also down on the quarter. This is our last show of the quarter, so we thought we'd take a look at Bitcoin versus the S&P 500 quarter to date. Bitcoin down more than 11%, close to 12% so far this quarter, underperforming significantly the S&P 500, which is up more than 4% over that same period of time. But Sonali, one quarter does not a trend make, right?
It certainly does, because if you zoom out and look at Bitcoin over the year, it is outperforming the S&P 500. The S&P 500 being roughly 15% higher nearly. You still see Bitcoin on the year up about 45%. Things are starting to flatten since the March high of almost $74,000. We are certainly below that high now at around $61,400. But listen, that is meaningfully lower than what we saw in that exuberance of that ETF-fueled rally, Tim.
Well, as we mentioned, politics a big part of our program. Former President Donald Trump is courting crypto proponents at his rallies and events. President Joe Biden may use Thursday's debate to reposition his own stance on crypto. Here's how some of our guests are anticipating the election's impact on digital assets.
President Trump announced himself as the so-called crypto president.
You saw Trump come out really strong over the weekend, making very pro-crypto statements. And now if one of them can grab that crypto brass ring, it's really going to help them in those swing states.
Both sides of the House presidential candidate actually have a voice in a crypto conference.
White House trying to have some strategy with pro-crypto, but at the same time vetoing 121. So I think it's been a very mixed signals.
You see President Trump being more overtly and openly supportive of digital assets and crypto than President Biden. But I will also say that until the votes are counted, nothing is in, and there is time to change some of that.
These elections are going to swing back and forth for a while. And so crypto shouldn't be partisan.
We are in the next great wave of innovation with crypto and blockchain. And if America doesn't embrace it, we're going to be left behind.
This idea that we're going to protect somebody from this new technology that cuts out the middleman, that allows people to transact directly instead of paying a fee, is just wrong thought of.
Unfortunately, I don't see all these things will play out until after the presidential election.
For more, we're joined by Balance of Power co-host Kaylee Lyons. She's in Washington, D.C. She's kept a very close eye on everything happening in D.C. when it comes to crypto. One thing that got my attention, Kaylee, was this Bernstein note that said that crypto may become the new Trump trade. Is that it? About going back to 2016, crypto the new Trump trade?
Well, it'll remain to be seen, Tim, but the whole idea behind that analysis is that Trump has been much more vocally advocating for Bitcoin, certainly, and for the crypto industry overall than we saw in his prior administration, where he was sometimes quite skeptical of the digital asset industry. But lately, we have seen him at rallies repeatedly expressing his support for the idea of Bitcoin, saying that he wants all Bitcoin mined in the U.S. and that really he just wants the U.S. to be out front and leading in this industry rather than in, say, second place, which is a bit of a difference than what we're seeing Joe Biden talk about, which is frankly not really addressing crypto much at all. But much of the Biden administration has been defined in terms of crypto policy by the action of the regulators appointed under it, including, of course, the SEC chair, Gary Gensler, who the industry often says is taking a regulation by enforcement approach. So it really is the kind of regulators that speak more for Joe Biden in this instance. But of course, on Thursday night, tomorrow night, Joe Biden will have the chance to speak for himself if he so chooses on his stance when it comes to crypto, as will Donald Trump. And we'll see if any specific policy is outlined. On specific policy, it's worth keeping in mind that Trump has been aligning himself with many who are more pro-crypto, including Vivek Ramaswamy, a former Republican presidential candidate himself, who has very much advocated for the industry and now is one of the most powerful surrogates for Donald Trump. And we have to keep in mind there is money at stake here as well. Trump has gotten the maximum donation possible in Bitcoin from the Winklevoss twins. And of course, there's also tens of millions of dollars in crypto supportive PACs, including Fairshake, which are mobilized maybe not necessarily to spend money in the presidential race, though surely they can, but also focusing down the ballot, considering while the president does have the power to appoint regulators that could help shape the picture for the industry, it is also Congress who has the power to write legislation, and they've had some difficulty in getting that through both chambers, as we have seen borne out this year when it comes to crypto.
Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons, thank you so much for your analysis. And remember, Kaylee will be part of our debate coverage tomorrow night. Do not miss that. And for more on the political landscape in crypto and the digital asset outlook overall, we are joined by Kraken CEO Dave Ripley, and we are going to want to get your updates on Kraken, absolutely. But just to follow on what Kaylee was talking about here, the uncertainty around crypto policy over the next 6 months, let alone the next couple of years, how are you thinking about the moves that may or may not be made depending on a potential change in administration? Is there anything the crypto industry is doing that you might as well hold off on until you know what the top might look like of this country?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me here. A lot of exciting things going on in the crypto industry. Never a dull day. I mean, honestly, if we just look back to where we were a year ago or a year plus ago, the market is completely different. Bitcoin is, frankly, in a really strong position right now, and we see a lot of movement going forward. The regulatory side, I think, of late over the past regulatory policy side, probably over the past couple of months, has become really active. We went from a place a year ago, particularly in the U.S., which was very challenged from a regulatory and policy standpoint, with like a U.S. government that was frankly quite hostile towards Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, to a place right now where we see a huge amount of positive momentum across the space, which is good to see, because frankly, if we look in our other markets, Europe, UK, Canada, Australia, we see positive momentum. We see governments taking some steps in the right direction to take a reasonable approach to cryptocurrency, and that just hasn't been the case in the U.S. for quite some time with the aggressive approach that we've seen.
Well, Dave, I'm curious if you've been discussing crypto policy with former President Trump and current Republican frontrunner Donald Trump, or any members of his team. Have you been doing that?
So on the policy side, I mean, we've had a number of different discussions across both sides, from a partisan standpoint. For what it's worth, we're extremely encouraged by what we've seen from the Donald Trump and his campaign over the past couple of months. He's embraced cryptocurrency. Frankly, he's met with many people in the industry, and had several events where he's building that knowledge and come out very positively towards cryptocurrency, which we absolutely embrace. And we think he's an intelligent person, and typically when someone who is willing to kind of go up the learning curve and they can do it quickly, we see positive results, because crypto is a fantastic innovation.
I'm curious what specifically you would advocate for most in a Trump term when it comes to crypto policy. If he does win in November, what's one thing you'd advocate for?
Well, look, the history. It's almost. It's difficult to really almost put your finger on it. I mean, we're just coming from a place where it's been almost the worst possible environment you can imagine, where you have this policy of, regulation by enforcement. You have a complete unwillingness to understand and come to the table and discuss the technology from what we see in the current, SEC and a number of the regulatory bodies in the U.S. So it's, there's only one way to go that's up. Again, though, fast forward to the past couple of months, we've started to see like really positive momentum. There's this bill, FIT 21, which is a market structure bill for cryptocurrency, which just passed the House with a much more positive vote than we expected. And, frankly, I think that's, a testament to cryptocurrency. It's also a testament to a lot of the people in Congress that have been working on this for a while,
Dave,
partnering with the industry. And then also, yes, I mean, it becoming a presidential campaign issue, and the Trump campaign coming out positively has been really a fantastic event.
Want to get a little bit more around the regulatory environment, not here, but abroad. When you think about MiCA, for example, yet to be finalized or soon to be finalized by the European Banking Authority, what does this mean about your decisions around Tether?
Yeah.
Have you made a decision?
Well, I mean, like with all of our products and offerings and technologies, I mean, as the regulatory environment evolves, as new licenses come in place, as new regulations come in place, we have, of course, look to adhere to those in all instances. And so I think it's still TBD where we're going to see, the Tether as a foundation organization, where they're going to net out with regard to regulation in any particular geography. But yes, there is a stablecoin legislation or regulation rather now as part of MiCA for stablecoins. And so that will indeed come to the fore as we see kind of where Tether and USDC and so forth come out with regard to regulation on that front.
Hey, Dave, before we let you go, our colleague Olga Karif reporting earlier this month that Kraken is said to be in talks for pre-IPO fundraising round, seeking more than $100 million. What can you tell us about a target for a potential IPO? What's the date that you're looking at?
Yeah, so just generally on the fundraising front, and with regard to some of those, articles that hit about, a currently active fundraise, the reality is we're right now, frankly, we are, having informal discussions with existing investors and, other parts of the investor community, as we have done in the past, and we kind of continue to do so. So there isn't anything formal in progress right now on that front. IPO, as you know, I can't really, get, specific on anything, frankly, timing or anything else from that nature. But, from a financial profile standpoint, and, it's not a surprising question, from a financial profile standpoint and success standpoint, Kraken is, frankly, a bigger and more profitable company than many public companies out there. So it's frankly not surprising that the question's being asked.
Well, Dave, certainly appreciate you joining us and taking the time. That's Kraken CEO Dave Ripley joining us from the Bay Area. Well, coming up, Anchorage Digital's Diogo Monica joining us on crypto banking regulation and the state of VC.
And former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms discusses her work with Coinbase and the campaign messaging on crypto in the presidential election.
And yesterday, SEC Chair Gary Gensler addressed the Ether ETF applications his team is reviewing.
It's really about the asset managers making the full disclosure so that those registration statements can go effective and those lawyers know what that is. It's something our Division of Corporation Finance handles hundreds or if not thousands of times over anybody's career. It's smoothly functioning. It's really up to the asset managers to make the proper disclosures.
Well, let's discuss the political and venture capital landscape in regards to crypto with Diogo Monica. He's the co-founder and now chairman of Anchorage Digital, the first federally chartered crypto native bank in the U.S., as well as a general partner for Haun Ventures. Diogo, good to have you with us this afternoon. Appreciate you taking the time. I just want to cut right to the chase here. I mentioned our show all about politics ahead of tomorrow night's debate. I'm curious how you see things shaking out in Washington over the next few months ahead of the presidential election. Do you see another Trump term or another Biden term as more friendly to what you're trying to do over at Anchorage Digital?
So right now, in general, I think we've all seen Trump's notes on crypto and how he's been positioning himself. But the reality is that everything is still open. I think the biggest conversation to be had right now in success is really that our industry is finally getting organized and engaging in the political process. That really is the most important part, other than Republicans and Democrats. It's this sign that we're a maturing and growing industry that is absolutely here to stay. And of course, to a certain extent, it's the obvious conclusion of 10 years of regulation by enforcement. You have fantastic founders that are trying to build legitimate businesses in crypto. You get in their way for long enough, and you're going to get single issue voters with large checkbooks. And so right now, I'm pretty excited about the crypto industry getting its act together.
Diogo, one question I have is, if you have all these other very large issues in the world, from geopolitics to inflation, why do single issue crypto voters believe that that is something that could really move the vote?
So look, I think in general, crypto will always be political, but doesn't have to be partisan. What we're seeing right now is the potentially first presidential debate where crypto comes up as a question. That would be amazing. And we're also seeing the current administration being completely hostile towards the industry at large. And as you all know, SEC in particular has been making it very difficult for founders to understand what the rules of the road are. And so when it comes to single issue voters and what they're looking for, they're just looking for clarity. And I think you've heard this over and over and over again for the past 10 plus years.
What kind of clarity are they looking for? What kind of clarity are you looking for? What's a specific policy recommendation that you'd give?
It is not that hard. We want clear rules of the road across, say, 3 areas. Number one, we've been talking about this, but we want stablecoin legislation. Stablecoins have been issued over $160 billion of them. You've heard these stats, how stablecoins alone actually hold more treasuries, US treasuries, than the country of Germany. Number two, we want to know who the regulator is. Is it the SEC? Is it the CFTC? And then finally, and very near and dear to my heart, we want an end to unelected bureaucrats debanking crypto businesses.
So what does this mean for how you all are targeting politicians? I mean, there's a presidential election certainly around the corner, but a lot of what you're talking about needs to be done in Congress. What does that look like on the ground as you're talking to lawmakers?
So it's really my job is to spend time with founders. And as an investor, what I do is I work every day with the most brilliant technologies. And they are around the world trying to use these crypto technologies to create the next generation of American companies. And so they are paying attention. They are talking to the regulators. They are talking to the folks in the Senate. And they are the ones actually engaging the most. We do our own engagement, but really the majority of my time is spent not just on regulation, but really on the technology piece, which candidly is a lot more important.
Who, in your view, is the most important person in Washington to what you're doing?
Right now would definitely be the next president of the United States. I think it's pretty clear. If you think about it, in a way, presidential elections are about the future. Crypto and some other of these frontier technologies are the future. So right now what you have is an election where you have voters on both sides of the aisle consistently saying that what they want is the United States to lead the way globally on innovation. And so these debates are going to offer Trump, specifically the one tomorrow, Trump and Biden an opportunity to finally tell the country how they'll accomplish that. And crypto should absolutely be a part of both of their answers.
Who do you think crypto advocates should support in November?
I think it's going to depend on tomorrow. It's going to depend on how this shakes out.
So still up in the air?
I think so. Trump has been absolutely pro-crypto, as we've seen. It's undeniable and unambiguous. And the Democrats have been very hostile to crypto. But we've also seen somehow a little bit of a change and a little bit of a notice that crypto is actually important, that there are 50 plus Americans that hold cryptocurrencies and care deeply about how they're seen and how the companies that either they're building or the companies that they're using to participate in this ecosystem are actually being treated by the regulators and by the politicians. And so they matter deeply. And so it is still in the air. And I do think that there could be still time for the Democrats to be more concrete about what they're going to do and change their tune.
Diogo Monica, co-founder and chairman of Anchorage Digital, as well as general partner for Haun Ventures. We're going to now bring in former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who now serves as a member of Coinbase's Global Advisory Council. And having served in politics yourself, very curious about why now you do want to work with crypto companies here.
Well, thank you for having me. And I do want to stress that I am here in my personal capacity. And I'll just say, like so many Americans, my introduction to crypto was not a great introduction during my time as mayor of Atlanta. We were on the receiving end of a very big cyber attack that took down our systems at that time. And I still believe it stands the biggest in American history against the municipality. And the ransom was asked for in Bitcoins. And so I was very skittish about crypto and Bitcoins. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of elected officials across the country. It's just not always a great introduction. But that being said, when I was approached by Coinbase to join the Global Advisory Board, it really did pique my curiosity. And having the benefit of having young children in my house, they were very excited that I was talking about crypto and strongly encouraged me to be a part of it. And just as I'm getting more educated, I don't present as any expert by any means, but realizing how it's helping to bridge the gap in communities of color was really important to me. And we have so many communities that are underbanked and unbanked. And the crypto and the blockchain economy is giving an opportunity for people to have access to the financial systems in a very different way.
That's exactly what I want to talk about, Keisha. So I'm glad you brought that up. Crypto doesn't have FDIC protections. You mentioned when you were mayor it being used as ransomware and holding hostage the city of Atlanta's computer system. Owning crypto doesn't give you a better credit score. It doesn't give you easier access to a mortgage. These are all things within the traditional financial system that, to my understanding, crypto does not help bridge. It's also volatile. So what's the use case here for the unbanked, for people who've been traditionally left out of the financial system? Why is it good for them?
Well, I had an opportunity yesterday to sit in the room with some very strong thought leaders during one of our global advisory meetings for Coinbase. And we heard from small business owners who've talked about how they are able to pay vendors, et cetera, and how it's able to reduce what they're paying in credit card fees. And I look at this is just the beginning. The financial institutions that we see today were not the financial institutions that we saw 100 years ago. We're still having discussions on how people can improve credit scores through paying their utilities on time. So I see it as an opportunity for an evolution. And it's not often, and we heard this repeatedly during our time together yesterday, it's not often that an industry is asking for regulation. Coinbase is being a leader in asking for more regulation so that we can deliver to consumers those things that are needed most. So again, for communities of color, quite often it is about building up a strong credit score. It is about bridging the wealth gap. And
Keisha, I have a really specific question for you here. We only have a minute left here, and I really want to hear your opinion on this. Given that Trump has come out so vocally in favor of crypto, do you think that there are Democratic voters who are switching over because of crypto alone?
And again, my personal opinion, I know that there have been a lot of statements where at one time he was not in favor of crypto. I think that their leaders are being cautious, and understandably so. But I think when you're working hand in hand with the industry and everyone is coming from a place of getting to success, then I think that's a bipartisan issue that all elected officials and those seeking to hold office can rally around.
Keisha Lance Bottoms, former mayor of Atlanta, also worked in the Biden White House, member of the President's Export Council, on the Coinbase Advisory Council. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you again. That is going to do it for Bloomberg Crypto this afternoon. Join us again, though, next week on Tuesday at noon, New York time. This is Bloomberg.